Hi, everyone. Welcome to the extended show. I am so excited. We had a great show today on BBTV. I've got Kayla Logue here. She is a best-selling author and founder of Move Into Words. She has so many accolades, and everything you need to know about her is down in the show notes. You can get in touch with her this way, and she is someone you're going to want to connect with. We've had a great conversation today just around how life can give you lemons. And Kayla was so great to write a book, and it is called
Always Squeezing Lemons.
Always Squeezing Lemons. That's right, because we are always squeezing lemons. So it's such a good, she's got such a great story about the resolve of, starting life out in a belief system that we're given around what we should do. So creating kind of on paper what we thought life was supposed to look like, and then getting there and being like, no, there's more than this. This is actually not enough. It's not good enough. And making that shift, and life threw a lot of lemons at her, and she was able to give those guys a good squeeze and create a really, really epic future. And all of this before the age of 30. So Kayla, happy birthday to you. And I want to know, since it's your birthday month, what is something you are leaving behind with your 20s? What are you letting go of?
Oof. I haven't had anybody ask the question that way.
If you know this, in my inner circle of all my friends, they all know on their birthday I'm going to ask them this question.
And I have a follow-up to it. You caught me a little off guard there. And I think it's actually just committing to being my true self. And I write an entire chapter about trusting my gut. And it's hard to constantly go in that direction, but even now there's a lot that has changed over the past 4 years, and so much growth has happened, and I'm feeling that change and shift currently happening. And so, in terms of letting go of, it's not necessarily the fear, but the comfort. I'm not scared of taking the jump. It's the comfort that, I feel like for, the past 3 years just been chaos. And so, and I found comfort and getting away from comfort and embracing what I know is true for me. So if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I want to maybe put it this way for those of you listening. And Kayla, you can correct me on this if I'm not interpreting.
You caught me off guard. I'm sure you got it.
It's so good. It's so good. But I'm thinking of how, look, we want the muscles. I want to have a nice bicep. And to do that work, it means that I'm going to have to do some dumbbell lifts, and I'm probably going to have to do some, pull-ups and some dips. And in that process, I'm going to get sore. So there's going to be some discomfort, and also a level of discipline that I have to get to what I want. And so, but I can get the biceps because I'm willing to do that work, and knowing that there's going to be some pain involved, but that the joy of what it is on the other side of that. And so I'm willing to deal with a little bit of that discomfort, a little bit of that pain, because that's where the growth is.
Absolutely. And I think for sure. And I think it's because I write a lot in my book about that process, but I think, and I've even said this, when you're more focused and more clear on the direction you want to go, your level of discipline, your level of commitment, your level of choices, your level of habits have to be much more than what they were when you were just kind of stepping into that. Right. So I'm in that next phase. It's almost like a video game where you're you play, oh, yay, I won. Okay, great. Okay, yay, I won. And now it's getting harder and harder. So I think it's letting go of that comfort and really throttling more into discomfort that I know where the soreness will come in, but it'll be worth it.
Yes, yes, and yes. And I love this because you are doing what I like to call, and I know I'm not the person that came up with this word, but it's the same thing. It's the same methodology that they use with things like a cold plunge, right? It's like putting yourself in that place of discomfort on purpose, but even you know it's coming though. You're somewhat prepared, and you're already kind of pre-processing before it happens to know that you're going to go do the thing. You're going to do the thing. It's going to be hard. It's going to be cold. But when you come out, you know that the benefits are both mental and physical in the sense of a cold plunge. So this is the same thing. And one of the things I've found, because I love comfort, don't get me wrong. Look, I start my Monday mornings with a 2-hour full body massage. The masseuse comes to my house. That's my 8 to 10 a.m. every Monday morning.
Oh,
So for any
gosh,
of
it's
you who
amazing.
try to book time with me and know that that's the time in the morning, we will not book time because that's my priority. Some people, I think there's a statistic about the number one like time people have a heart attack is 8 a.m. on Monday mornings because no one wants to go to work. People are coming off the weekend and they loathe going to work. That's when, yes. And I was like, oh, I
That's
want to do the
horrible.
opposite. I know. I was like, what can I do that I love on Monday mornings? And that's exactly what happened. I literally come downstairs out of bed. My masseuse has already set up everything and I'm on the table. That's my first 2
I
hours
love
of every
that for
Monday.
you.
Yes. Yes. And so it's, again, I love comfort and what makes those massages feel even better is after I've had a great week of workouts and I make sure I'm extra sore by the time I lay on that table on Monday morning because it just feels a little bit better. And I know I'm getting the even more benefits as they're working out the lactic acid in my body and all the good things. So there's a twofold here, right?
Yes.
And so oftentimes, y'all, life, the universe, God wakes us up by putting those obstacles, allowing those obstacles to show up for us. So I'm not, do I think that there's a group of gods up there rolling dice? Not necessarily, but I do believe that for yourself, sometimes this is energetically how it works. If you're not willing to get uncomfortable to be more comfortable, because that's really what it ends up being, then what happens is the universe shows up with something for you to say, hey, it's time to learn the lesson. Mm-hmm. For me, it was getting breast cancer, my dog dying, and getting sued all at the same time, which made me start everything all over again. That was my 2018. It was your 2020. Right. And it made me reevaluate everything. And I said, wow, what am I doing? What is really aligned for me? What is actually important to me? And obviously from coming out of breast cancer, it was my quality of life. 100% my quality of life, because quantity, we have no idea when that's showing up. Right. But my quality of life, I do have some sovereignty over what that can look like. And that really shifted my values, and it was creating more space on my calendar. It was not waking up to start answering emails and questions now. It was like, no, everything can wait until I've done my day and in my morning in the way that feels good for me. And then I can go in and knock out the rest of the world's issues for them. And so much of that was so good for me because I was able to produce even better results for myself, especially financially, better than before, easier than before. And I went, look at that. Well, I've been doing this wrong this whole time. Thank God that this happened at 40 so that I'm not figuring this out at 60 or 80 or whatever age that would be. Wish I'd done it sooner. And you know what? Everything's happened up until this moment to get me here. And I think that's so much like you have such a similar story. And I think this is where we go, like what is the secret sauce? And what comes up for you, in when you think about your own secret sauce in how the process happened for you?
I've realized like when I stopped trying to force things just started to naturally flow. Yes. And I think that's the simplest way to put it, because you're, again, kind of just when you wake up in chaos, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that. And like, you don't even give yourself a moment to breathe. And whether it's you're busy with work or like crazy things going on with family or, any situation. And like, I mean, even with your situation, you came out on the other side of it. Same thing with, very different. I've had actually a near death experience, but I didn't go through, cancer, breast cancer, but it's how you come out of those situations is what, is the quality of life you lead, because we can sit there and say, oh, life is kicking my butt, or you can say, no, I'm going to kick its, and really not even kick its butt, but make the most of it. Totally. When you actually, and I think you could definitely agree with this, is when you actually think about death, it makes you think more about life. 100%. Because at the end of the day, like that is, no matter what, we all have that in common. Like we will all die one day. We don't know when it's going to be. We have no idea. But what we do have in our control is how we live every single day up until that day. That's right? It could be tomorrow. And I think it's not something to be scared of. It's something to embrace and think of it. It's truly an opportunity we all have. We all have 24 hours in a day. No one has more advantage over the other in terms of time, but the people that are further ahead treat time as their greatest asset, right? And the people that live a better quality of life treat time as their greatest asset, and they recognize that. And I think that is one thing, you know, for me, it's where I've realized through this is, again, when I start doing things that I'm not forcing, or I know is like, it just feels easy. Doors start opening, clarity, you know, it just, that's how, I mean, with the nonprofit, with the book, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not just like every day I wake up and it's rainbows and butterflies. My gosh, like that would be a lie. But by all means, it all just feels so right. It doesn't feel hard. Right. And, you know, when you're just exhausted and just drained from something, you need to let it go. Right. You know, if it's holding you back, if you feel like there's no growth left, there's no opportunity left there, when you let it go, it's like a complete release. And it's crazy, like the unexpected opportunities. And, you know, I always say the most beautiful blessings happen in the uncertainty and the unknown. And it's when you can embrace that, because that is uncomfortable, but when you can embrace that there, you know, you become a lot more willing to live the life that you're meant for, and figuring out what that even really kind of looks like.
Yes, yes, and yes. And I'd say that that's also the activator of faith, whatever your faith is, right? My faith is in my future that I know is going to be full of rainbows and butterflies. Then it's, how can I hold that vision so that I am not a slave to whatever these circumstances are right now? And it's like, okay, I can see forward. And because I can see forward, I'm not going to trip over pennies. I'm not going to trip over the small things because I already know what's before me. And it will really test how faithful you are to your own belief system. And I tell people this all the time: challenge your beliefs, because so many of our beliefs are handed to us by other people who are well-meaning. We have a culture that also hands us a belief system. And it's so important to just be able to get to a place where you can be still, you can be confident and sure for whatever your personal needs are, instead of looking around and being like, well, the Joneses have that, so I guess I'm supposed to have that. It's like, but do you really want that?
Like, that's exhausting.
Yeah, it is exhausting. And then it's like, because the Joneses are also looking at the Smiths and they're saying, oh, yeah, maybe I want that too. So they're doing the same thing. And so nothing is authentic. Like, what is a good life? And I think that's it's such a different definition for everyone. You know, some people are going to say it's being full of children and full of these activities and sitting at the dinner table every night. It's like, hey, more power to you. Like, I'm okay that I don't wake up and have a school schedule to live by. And I'm not unhappy about that. Like, that's a choice I made a long time ago. And I love my life. And I think it's important to figure out, like, what is a great life for you? What does that actually look like? And can we embrace that and go into it fully? You know, maybe it's just a small, cozy space that feels comfortable and full of peace, or it's a 10,000 square foot house with a waterfall pool and, I don't know, glass ceiling, whatever it is, right? So I think people all have their idea of like, what kind of life do you want to live? Like, what feels really good for you? And I love your generation, Kayla, because I feel like y'all are way better at like experiences over stuff. Like, that's such a, like, I hear that all the time, and I'm like, good for y'all for figuring that out really early. My mom used to say to me, because I've always been a traveler, and she's like, you know, you're doing it right. She says, if most people wait till they're retired, and you know what happens? You have to pee all the time when you're old. So now's the time to go.
That is amazing.
Like,
that is so funny.
Advice.
Oh my gosh. No, and I love traveling. I think I'm like very grounded in the sense that I love a routine and structure to a certain extent, especially with like getting, have a task at hand needs to get accomplished and, have deadlines. I mean, let's go. But I also can work very good from the beach, wherever that beach is. So I've never had an issue with that either. Right. And don't get me wrong, I love nice things. I really do. But at the end of the day, like, if I had a choice to be able to, have the freedom to go wherever I want, with whoever I want, whenever I want, for as long as I want, compared to having a bunch of items that just are sitting there, for sure I'm picking that first.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need a bunch of things.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when like after I split in 2020 with my ex, and you know, we had 2 houses, we had a dog, we had everything, and then like I literally just packed my car with my personal belongings. That's all I had, and lived out of a suitcase for over a year. I was like, this is easy, you know? And I mean, I love going shopping still. But it's just, you don't need a lot. You really don't.
You
You
don't.
really
Yeah.
don't need a lot of things.
Right. No, you're totally right. I remember being at a medicine ceremony and I was outside and it was a beautiful night. It was just full of stars and the clearing we were in was just full of we're kind of in the middle of trees. And then the night sky and then like a roaring fire. And I thought to myself in that moment, what else do we really need?
Mm-hmm.
Like what else? Like all the things that we think we need. I'm like, life can be so much more simple and less complicated when it's simple. And I used to laugh at the people who, and I know there's a bunch of famous people that do this, but they wear like the same thing every day. Like they have 10 black t-shirts in their closet and 10 pairs of jeans. And it's the same clothes every day because they don't want to have to take the mental capacity to have to think about like, oh, how do I want to put clothes together? But whereas the other side of the spectrum are people who are really creative, who are like, ooh, how fun. I get to go in my closet and design an outfit today. Right. So it's just such a different like structure of operating.
I know. I'm like kind of in between that because I love the idea of like, and I'm a very neutral person. I mean, like I like whites, navies, tans, blacks, you know, but also every once in a while I want to wear like a hot pink shirt. So I'm kind of like, I love the idea of being like on brand every day, you know, just navy or white or something. But I'm like, I really do like kind of a little bit of a variety here and there. So
scarves. I think scarves are going to be your fix.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely could do that. That's perfect. I know it's funny you were saying that like in terms I went to the Maldives with my sister. We did a little sister trip there this year. And I know it's not obviously it's a bougie trip to get to, but when you're there, you're just in the middle of the ocean in a little hut. There's nothing there. And I'm like, I'd be fine here for the rest of my life.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I felt the same about Tahiti. It was the same way. It was like in the middle of nowhere, and that was all it was. And I was like, "This is amazing. I could live here every day, no problem."
100%.
I was looking at every island boy. I was like, "Is he single? Is it?
Love it. I love it.
Awesome. There was something magical about thinking about fishing for my food, and then like making a fire on the beach and doing the whole thing. And I was just like, there's something about
this.
Cool. Yeah, kind of cool. Kind of cool. Yeah. It just takes the fuss out of like everything else, which made it just 100%. To enjoy those pieces of it. Right. Yeah.
Just simple.
I get it. Yes. The simplicity. So talk to me about the relationship stuff, because I feel like, you know, you've gone from being married, going through a breakup. Now you're on the other side of that. What is the best relationship advice that you've ever received?
Ooh, you know, really, I feel like there's a couple different things in terms of, you know, relationship advice that I've kind of gone through. And really, I mean, so the toxicity of not being able to communicate and the foundation of respect and trust, like all being broken and, you know, kind of just doing what I thought I should be doing and not really focusing on like an actual healthy relationship. You know, you have to have love and respect for yourself before you can love and respect somebody else. And I think that's really, really important, is having the self-love for yourself before you can really want to bring somebody else into that space. And rather than, you know, when you go through a hard breakup and you just go to a rebound or, you know, kind of do other things in between. And that's what a lot of people get stuck in that phase, rather than dating themselves. Like date yourself, take yourself to dinner, buy yourself the dress, go on the vacation alone. Right. So until you can really get to know who you are and build your own self-respect and your own self-trust, bringing somebody else into your world is nearly impossible. I've received so many good relationship advice and really have built off of my own massive mistakes, you know, and kind of been able to give myself that own advice. And I actually am now in like a very healthy relationship, which for a while was hard. You know, I was very self-sabotaging and, you know, just everything, and really kind of got out of that though and realized I was like, wow, okay, like a healthy relationship is real. And so I learned so much even just through the reflection, but it took me being able to, you know, really love myself, really trust myself, really respect myself in order to be able to want to even provide the same for somebody else in my space.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, that's so good. I definitely learned after a very long relationship that I hate to call it unhealthy because I don't know if unhealthy is the right word for it. There just became for sure a misalignment in our
Yeah.
values and just a way that we weren't intentional about some things, and so we became very unintentionally we unintentionally broke up. And so much of it had to do with just like not being curious with each other anymore. Like there's it was just we got into this like weird routine of not even doing stuff together like we used to. And then you start I think that's where it kind of begins to drift into that like, oh, I'm living with my roommate zone for a lot of people. And I hear that a
Yeah.
lot too. And so
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes people get lost in raising kids and, being all about their children. And I was listening to someone the other day talk about how it's so important in any relationship that we don't lose ourselves and that we don't forget that we are in a partnership and this is our teammate. And
Mm-hmm.
although there is this span of time where you may raise children and things may shift a little, like prioritizing the relationship, especially during that time, is so important because eventually those kids are going to grow up. If they're going to leave home and the two of you are going to be back, just the two of you again. And so,
Yeah.
can you also be a great example to your kids about prioritizing your relationship and letting them know that actually that's the most important relationship? And so, I think that it's just that sometimes that gets lost sight of, and losing our own selves in that, like you said, not being in a place where you can learn to love yourself. I hear people say it, and I think a lot of people are like, how do I do that? So I would love to know from you, like, what were some of the ways that you fell back in love with yourself?
Well, I mean, we kind of discussed a little bit more like on the past in the live show when we talked about even journaling and, taking the time. Like I really just started saying no to things that really, I usually would have said yes to just by default.
Mm,
I really just became intentional with everything I was doing. Like if I wanted to go do something, I would go do it. And maybe it was spontaneous, maybe it was trying something new, and just really kind of trying to do things that like I didn't have the accountability to somebody else, right? Like I learned to live by myself. And when you're, when you can be comfortable, like, and you are actually like comfortable being alone, you'll never be lonely. And I think that's a really important thing because you never, no longer when you're in a partnership, you don't rely on them. You don't become codependent. Like you are your own independent self. And I think it's so, so important in terms of like learning how to love yourself is doing the things for yourself. Like you have to make the decisions for yourself. I mean, of course, when you're in a relationship, you make decisions together, but at the same time, you are still you. You're not, I don't really love the like better half term. Like that's not, like
mm,
you don't
right,
complete me, I don't complete you, we elevate each other, right?
right,
You're in my life because we make each other lives better, not because you
right.
complete me.
Yes.
And I think when we can like really see that separation, but taking care of yourself and experiencing different things, also messing up and making it right. I think
Yeah.
it's just really, really important to take the time alone though. Like I was single for 4 years before I started dating somebody. I mean, don't get me wrong, I dated and did all the wrong things, but like by all means, in terms of like a really committed relationship and finding somebody in terms of emotional intelligence, like really evolving your emotional intelligence that
Yeah.
is on your same wavelength and wants the same things you do. I mean, because no
Yes.
matter what, no matter how hot they are and how much you like them, if they want kids and you don't, it's never going to work,
That's right.
and it's really aligning your values, your morals, what your visions are, and being on that same team and committing to being partners and through the thick and thin, and not being like we talked about in the last show, it's not Disney. It's not Disney, it's
Right.
a real life.
Right.
So when you can find a partner that really does like is your biggest cheerleader and is your biggest always in your corner, but also is very independent and strong themselves, then you got a good teammate.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's definitely remembering they are your teammate, not your competition. And
Yes,
that can be hard. That can be
it
hard not
can.
to let someone show up and you just feel naturally competitive. I remember dating someone who I felt like we were actually incredibly compatible, but we were also both so competitive that
Yeah.
we would just unconsciously become competitive with each other. And that's when I went, "Oh man, if we could rein this in, we would rule the world."
Yeah.
But I don't think we can. And
It's a
so it was,
constant reminder.
yeah. Yeah.
It
And
really
and
is.
and the being alone part without being lonely, or I think that's really important, because I definitely know people who do not like to be alone. They got to have someone. And even my own mom, like I watch her and I love my mom. She's been such a rock for me. And I also see, like, I've chosen to often live places that are a little more remote or on more property or whatever. And she's always like, it's so quiet here. Like for her, it brings up being a girl who grew up in a village in the remote part of Thailand where there was ghost stories, and like it was a little scary when it's quiet at night and you don't know what's around, and it's a small community. And I just went, oh, this brings up for her own like childhood stuff that has nothing to do with me. And
Yeah.
so, can I not allow her fears to be my fears? Number one, yes. And number two, it was like, okay, and mom, I love this. Like, I love a quiet night. I loved walking out last night. There was like no moon in the sky, and it was just full of stars. And I looked up and I was like, I live here. This is amazing. Like, I love
Yeah.
this, And
Right.
so much of it is just figuring out what works for you and what feels good for you. And I've realized for myself, especially after definitely falling back in love with myself and redating myself and realigning with my own values, like, here are my values. And if I meet someone who has a high EQ and IQ, I want both.
Yeah. All of them. Yeah.
Exactly. And when they show up, can we come together in this really beautiful way to support and elevate each other really consciously? And we would both be choosing each other. It wouldn't be a, well, I'm not great if you're not around, or it's like, no, I'm awesome by myself.
Right.
And is this someone I want to invite into my life? Because there is actually going to be a little bit more of a layer of like considerations. And there's this layer of other things that show up that you are choosing to invite in. Or do I just want to enjoy this life that I've built all by myself? Like, I'm comfortable with either one of those. But also, when it comes to partnership, like, no, I'm really clear that I want someone who's also feeling great about their life, and that we're going to make the choice to come together and enjoy it together and make memories together, and that we want to choose that versus it feeling like, oh, I have to, or I can't
Yeah.
live without, So I think those are really important distinctions that make such a difference than how I've gone into past relationships. And I think that part is also really important, because you scrutinize a little bit more, and also you're just more conscious about your choice and what you're willing to accept or not accept, and what that looks like.
Well, it is. I mean, I will say, even, and you can absolutely attest to this, when you do get comfortable being alone, when you letting people into your space, you are a lot more particular about that.
Yes.
And it's a lot harder because you are comfortable by yourself. You're like, do I really want to? And that took me, that was hard for me, because I was, I had such great momentum. I was doing all these things. And, and the guy that I'm seeing now, like, he was very patient. Thank God. Cause I was just like, no, I don't want a relationship. I'm not planning a relationship for 5 more years. But I'm like, we don't really plan these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of when things are hitting you in the face, and you just like, you either like let it pass on by, or you actually embrace and accept it. But in order to be in that position to really identify what that is, like, you have to be alone to feel comfortable. You'll never really be lonely when you're able to be alone and happy there. And I think that's so important before you ever, start dating or are dating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because otherwise you just end up bringing your traumas into that relationship, and you
yeah.
rework patterns. And y'all, I'm not saying that you need to be completely healed of all the things before you start a relationship, but you and your partner both need to know what you're getting into. So I
Yeah.
think that
Aware. You don't
yes,
need
the
to be healed. You need to be
awareness.
aware.
Yes, exactly. Like having a partner who can actually show up and go, hey, by the way, like, you're really activated by what we're talking about right now. Can we break this down a little bit? Or, hey, like, I'm watching your 5-year-old come out right now and it is not looking good. Like, like,
Yeah.
what are the things and the ways that we can show up for each other? And I think having that person who can support, and that you can support them in a really healthy way, versus feeding into their, instead of trauma bonding, can we show up and like challenge each other a little bit and make each other better, and
Yes.
just bring awareness when these things are happening. And I think that we can do that in really loving ways. We just have to make the choice to do that.
100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Kayla, you've been a remarkable guest And thank you for all of the open conversation. And y'all, there is a download that Kayla has on her website. It's kaylalogue.com. And if you go there, it is a download on confidence. And I feel like all of us can always benefit from a little more confidence. So do the exercises, get the freebie, and go listen to the show we did earlier on BBTV. The recording is up, and it was great. It was great. More depth than even more what we talked about just now. And Kayla, again, thank you. Y'all, everything you need to know is in the show notes. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And with that, see you next time.